Video I'm going to explain you the object types in Oracle, which is the which is was built by Oracle to implement object-oriented programming concepts in using SQL, for which they have specially designed a tool which is called PL-SQL programming language, which can be only used in Oracle. So what we will be doing is in this video is we'll study how PSQL was designed and what is it used for. Then we'll study about object types, and lastly we'll be doing with the practical. So let's check what content do we have in this. So as we already talked about the content that we will be seeing in this video, so first thing that we will be learning in this video is about PL-SQL language and why it was created, and the other tools which are useful for our program. Then we will study about object type and how is it used for to implement object-oriented programming concepts in SQL, and then we'll study about the advantages of object type in Oracle. And last in the session, what we'll do is we'll write a simple practical implementation program for Oracle using the notepad and the command prompt, and we'll be writing the program of address object type where we'll create a residence instance of object giving it some address. So let's look upon the requirements now. So talking about requirements, Oracle 11G is the most important tool for our practical implementation. As you all know that PL-SQL was designed specially by to implement or object-oriented programming by Oracle. So it's not a standalone programming language, and we can only implement it using Oracle. The next thing that we require is command prompt and a simple text editor. And version 11G of this Oracle database, which included built-in testing for changes and capabilities. It takes back in time, superior compressions of all objects of data, enhanced disaster recovery. Okay. So now let's learn about what PL-SQL was. So PL-SQL by Oracle is an extension of SQL language which combines data manipulation power of SQL with processing power of procedural language to create super powerful SQL queries. This means that using PL-SQL, we can enhance the power of SQL language for not just working with databases but also to implement some features or concepts of procedural programming languages like C++, Java, and Python, and using which we can create super powerful SQL queries to work with real-time entities. So it also ensures seamless processing of SQL statements by enhancing the security, portability, and robustness of data. By this, we mean that programming procedural language concepts of program object-oriented, like data encapsulation and others, will help to enhance the security and portability of our SQL queries or code. Then PL-SQL means instructing the compiler, like what the compiler needs to do and how to do it in a procedural way. That's why we call PL-SQL has a structured oriented language. But the most important thing is its full form is procedural language extensions to SQL. So in its name itself, it is written that it is a extension to SQL. Now let's go upon our next topic. So, as we already studied in the previous concept of PL-SQL, that it helps to enhance the power of SQL by implementing object-oriented programming or procedural language concepts. So, what is object-oriented programming? We will be studying now. It is all about writing procedures and or functions that perform operations on data. That is what we do. We create some entity or we create some variables in the programming which have its own data and its own method, and the methods are used to manipulate that data. In this way, we can work with real life entity which has some attributes and some methods. Object-oriented programming is about creating objects that contain both data and the functions. The concept of object-oriented language are very helpful in working of software which deal with real-life problems. So many softwares, as we see, we like Amazon and all. This all are built using powerful languages like Java, and these are all uh, object-oriented programming. Some of the concepts of OPP are inheritance, polymorphism, data encapsulation. Inheritance is, and these are all useful for enhancing the powers of any language. And to implement this object-oriented programming language, PL-SQL was built by the Oracle. And we have to note this that PL-SQL is not a standalone programming language, and it is only available in Oracle. So let's move on to our next topic. So now we have completed all the pre-requirements to study about the object type. We have learned about PL, SQL, and object oriented programming. Now let's talk about what we will be learning here, which is object type. An object type combines attributes and methods into a single programming concepts. Just like classes in any programming language, object-oriented programming language like C or C++ have its own attributes and methods, which then creates which can be the help tool to create instances from or which are called object in those language. And the object type construct allows programmer to define their reusable. Like we have to note down that this code of object type is reusable. It's just like class in any other procedural programming language. An object type must be created in database before it can be used in a PL/SQL program. So first you have to create a object type in database, and then it can be used in PL/SQL program. An instance of object type like is object in the same way, or the variable which have used the blueprint of the blueprint or the object type to create itself. It can use the methods and attributes of the object type. Objects are either persistent or transistent. By persistent, it means object are either stored in database or it are stored in PL/SQL variables. Now let's move on to what object types actually are. So now let's talk about object types in detail. Object types are similar to classes in any other procedural programming language, which contains data and its attributes. With the help of this, it is possible to model real-world entities such as customers and purchase orders as objects in database. For example, we can create an object type of employee, and then we can create instances from that employee, which will contain the name, employee ID code for him and other details. And we can also create some methods like to change the employee name, ID, or its salary in this object type, and which will be used by all the instances of that employee object type. New object types can be created from any built-in database types and any previously created object types. Object reference and collection types. Object types can work with complex data such as images, audio, and video too. So Oracle database stores metadata for user defined types in schema that is available to SQL, PL/SQL, Java, and other programming languages. So it basically means that the whatever user-defined types or object types you are creating in the PL/SQL or Oracle, its metadata or the information about that object type or user-defined type will be stored as metadata inside the Oracle database. Let's move on to our next topic. Before moving to the practical implementation of object types, First, let's talk about the two main components of PL-SQL, which is attributes and methods. Attributes is basically the properties of the or the column in which the data is stored for a particular object type. Each attribute will be mapped to data type that defines the processing and storage type for that attribute. Suppose we are working on attribute type called ID, then the ID will have the data type of varchar or maybe integer too. If you are working with name, then it surely will be varchar. So in this way, every attribute has its own data type stored inside this metadata of that object type. The attributes can be any valid PL/SQL data type. Now, next is the method. Methods are subprograms that is defined in the object type. So by subprograms, it means methods are used to provide to perform specific tasks on this data of that object type or the attributes of data type. It can modify the values of these attributes in data type or create new values or manipulate this. They are not stored in any data. They are mainly used to define the processes inside the object type. We can take an example for validating data before populating the object type. And these are declared inside the object section type and defined named in the object type body section. Now let's see the structure or syntax. So this is the basic syntax for creating or for defining and initializing an object in object type in Oracle, where first we have to use object type, the keyword which is create or replace type, and then we have to write the object type name, and then we have to declare it as an object. So what we are doing is we are simply using create or replace, then give providing the type, which is then the name followed by the name of that object type, and we are declaring it as an object by using has object keyword. Then inside this uh, we are defining the attributes that are of the data type, and then we are creating simple body for the same. Earlier as we have used the type of the object, now what we'll do is we'll create or replace type by body, its object name, and as object, where we'll provide all the member functions or the methods that are used. And the three simple syntax is important here is with begin and end, where after begin the main part or the execution part of the object type starts, and end is basically to um, define the or to end the execution code of Oracle, after which we can also add exception handling below this. Now let's check the practical implementations. So as we now have studied about object types, now let's talk about the advantages of using object types. So first of all, in general, the object type is similar to class mechanism as we have already studied, which is similar to classes in C++ and Java. So all the applications of this object-oriented programming language, which class have, are available in object type 2. Other than just simply enabling application developers to directly access the data structures, it has several other advantages, which are like object can be encapsulated. As we already talked, it ensures the security of your data that you are working by providing data encapsulation, and then it also gives you efficient she in your code and reusability, which by which you can simply reuse your code again, and then it is easy to understand and work with, and it makes real world entities working with real world entities very easy. Now let's check the practical implementation of object type. Okay, so now we will be working with the practical implementation of PL-SQL program. So for this, first let's start a notepad where we'll write serve set serve output on, which is for basically allowing to display in the command prompt. Then we are creating the body of object type, which is using create or replace type. Then the object type name is address as object, and then we are using the three keywords important to for execution of the object type, which is declare, begin, and end at the last. And remember the forward slash after every block of code. Then we have defined five variables or attributes inside the type address, which is house number, street, city, state, and pin code, followed by its data type, which is varchar2 for all. And then in declare we have declared the instance of this object type address, which is residence. And in the begin what we are doing is we've defined a simple residence address. We have initialized this instance of the object residence of object type address with values like 103A MG Road, Jaipur, Rajasthan, and 201 for house number and all. Then we are using dbms output dot put line for printing out each of these values, or you can say attributes, into the CMD. We will name this file as main pl.sql, and this will make it easy for us. So now let's open CMD and we will try to run this file by writing at the rate main pl and enter. So you can see we have got this, and remember this all will be run only inside the SQL plus, so make sure you have this installed. So concluding this video or the session, we have studied about PSSQL, which was designed by Oracle to specially implement object-oriented programming concepts in Oracle or in SQL, or to enhance the powers of SQL for working with real-life entities and implementing object-oriented programming concepts, which enhances not just enhances the powers of SQL, but also provides security and other advantages of OPP concepts. So once the object type is created, it can be used in subprogram declarative sessions too. And there are multiple ways in which object types can be useful for us to work with, and we can just simply create. And what we saw is we created an address object type of which we created objects named residence, where we provided initialized this residence object of object type address with some values, and we simply printed it in the command prompt. And this is simple to understand, and this is all. Thank you.